Welcome to my dad's podcast, My Black is Transnational. Follow him on Instagram. Hope you enjoy the show.
Hello everyone, you are listening to My Black is Transnational. I am your host, Dr. Kaleshi Bay Lambis, and I'd like to thank you all for joining me. If this is your first time listening to My Black is Transnational, please feel free to rate, review, and definitely subscribe to the podcast if you like what you hear. You can access me and the show on different podcast listening apps. So Spotify, Google, Apple, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. This show is also available, so I encourage you to subscribe, and your feedback is definitely most important. Now, if you've been here from the get-go, I just want to let you know that we're almost done with season 1 of My Black is Transnational. We're about 16 episodes in, and I got a couple more left before we wind down season 1 for the summer. And I want to thank you all who have been listening to me and listening to this show since the groundbreaking, I should say. Thank you so much for joining me on this ride and just sticking with me. And for those of y'all who are new listeners, you can always catch up to the shows and listen to past episodes on those podcasts that I already mentioned. So follow me on Instagram at blacktransnational_. You can also follow me on Twitter at MBI_transnational. I haven't tweeted anything yet, and I know this is going to be a disservice to one of my homies who encouraged me to get the Twitter account. Sis, I'm going to do something. I've been slacking, but I promise you I'm going to actually start using that account much more. And then you can also email me at blacktransnational17@gmail.com. If you just want to email me, send me something, send me a message, some kudos, or you have some beef, or you just have some words for me that you may not want to say, or Instagram or Twitter, wherever, email me. All right. Okay. Now that we've gotten those formalities out the way, want to talk about today's episode. So today I'll be having on a really, really good friend of mine. We're going back to interviews. I just want to mention that because I know the past couple episodes it's just been me and you. But now that we've had that time together, it's time for us to go back to our interview. So I have a special guest who will be joining us, a really good friend of mine, Dr. Dade Ilunga-Tishwaka, who is a professor at the University of West Florida in Pensacola and also a visiting professor at Columbia University in New York City. Man, when I tell you this transnational journey started with me and him, that's the God honest truth. Dr. Ilunga-Tishwaka has been my guy since day one, just from my graduate school years, and he's been a long-time good friend, almost family, if that's the better word, when it comes to just my entire journey as a professional, upcoming scholar in this field. So what we're going to talk about is the French African immigrant experience. I think sometimes when we talk about the Black immigrant or the African immigrant, if we're not including the diaspora, we don't really talk about the French-speaking ones, and we don't talk too much about the Haitians and other people who may have francophonic backgrounds as far as their country's vernacular and language. So we're going to talk about what that experience is like being a transnational from a French-speaking country, because it behooved me to not mention the language barrier and how that plays a role as far as the immigrant experience, especially when you are considered a Black immigrant, and how that plays a role as far as acculturating and assimilating, not just being a Black person, but being a Black person who has to deal with language barriers that may not necessarily have come from a country where English is the native tongue. And what does that do as far as just your process? And what does that do as far as your transnationalism? How much more does one have to rely on the community that's created here in the United States in order to be able to sustain culture, to be able to sustain identity, continue your cultural practices, and remain transnational? So Dade and I talk about a lot of things in this conversation. It's a great interview. And I definitely encourage you all to check out his work. He's currently working on issues related to stroke, We've published some papers together. I'll make sure to share his information on the info for this episode. So if you want to just look him up, Google him. He's done a lot of good work and he's going to continue to do some good work. We've done some good work together. So I'm very excited to have you on. I could not do this podcast and complete season 1 without having him on. So I'm very happy that he actually got to join us for this show. So I think I've shared a lot of words and I'll stop here and we'll transition to the interview. So without further ado, here's my talk with Dade Lungashishwaka. Okay, everyone, welcome to My Black is Transnational. Today we have a special guest on the show, a very, very good friend of mine, honestly, one of the founders of this whole thing that we started, been with me since the beginning, Dr. Dade Lungashishwaka, my brother from another mother, from another country. Welcome on the show, bro.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ida Lambert, for inviting me. I'm really honored to be on your show.
Man, you ain't got to call me Dr. Ida Lambert. We on a podcast, man. Like, you call me, bro. Yeah, I know we're official, but we're not that official right now, man. So it's just an honor to have you here. Like I mentioned, for those who are listening, we started this this whole transnational idea started between Dade and me, just in a conversation we were having at the University of Illinois when I worked at the Multicultural Health Center. And we were just talking. About our interests as far as African immigrants and just some of the interesting things that we do and the things that we found in common. Him being from his country, which he'll tell you about, and then me being from Nigeria, and just those similarities. And we just said, let's look into this. Let's see what's up. And here we are. And we've kind of taken off with this research. We've published papers together. We've written a book chapter together. And there's so many more things to come. So that's just an introduction, right? So if you can give me a couple minutes to just introduce yourselves to the listeners about, who you are, where you're from, and anything else you want to share.
Right. Thank you so much again. So, yes, my name is Dade Lungashishwaka, and I am originally from the Republic Democratic of the Congo. And I actually am an assistant professor at the University of West Florida. I am also a visiting assistant professor at Columbia University in the Division of Stroke. So, and my research interest is, just like Dr. Ibe Lambert said, is lying within the realm of immigrant health, transnationalism, trying to understand the impact of the connection that people maintain to their motherland when it comes to their health. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah. And we're both from University of Illinois, as I already mentioned, and that's where we did our training. But you are originally from the DR Congo. So since this show is about transnationalism, can you explain, what was that experience like? Because I think you compared to me, I came to the United States at a younger age, but you came a little bit when you were older. So what was that experience for you, traveling and migrating from your old country, your home country, to the United States? What was that experience for you?
It was challenging, honestly speaking. So coming at the older age, you have to learn the language. You have to try to understand also the culture. And it wasn't easy, but I really work hard to make myself understandable when I speak English, and from that, then trying to understand the culture and everything. But other than that, I would say it's a great experience, to trying to learn other people's cultures and to understand it. I think it's an amazing experience.
And in your country, in Congo, the primary language there is what? Is it French, or is it what is the primary language vernacular in your country?
The primary language is French, but besides French, we have so many languages. But we have another what is considered as one of the main language besides French, which is called Lingala, and that language is spoken in because I forgot to say that in the introduction, we have two different countries named Congo. We have the Democratic Republic of the Congo. We
Mm-hmm.
also have the Republic of Congo. It's next to each other, and the Lingala one, it is spoken in both countries actually.
Oh, okay.
So that's that's pretty much it when it comes to language.
So like, so me being from English speaking or what we call an Anglophonic country like Nigeria or Ghana, one of the things that I always try to keep in mind is that coming to America, it was so easy for me to be able to acculturate and even assimilate because I spoke
Yeah.
English pretty well. Maybe it wasn't necessarily the American English; it was more so British English. But there's
Mhm.
such a huge similarity. There's so they resemble each other so well, give or take a couple spellings. But for you
Mhm.
coming from a French speaking African country, like what was the most difficult thing about that? Was it language barrier or just understanding what was the most impactful aspect of your acculturation process?
The most difficult things I will say that right away is the language barrier. When you get at the airport, you don't understand even the accents of American people.
Mm,
I mean, that's one of the biggest challenges. You have to adapt yourself to be able to understand the accents in order for you to start understanding even what Americans are talking about. So that was one of the challenge. But once you got that, it's pretty much it became easy for you to start understanding now the culture. Because to me, to being acculturated, eh, there is a first step for people like coming in non-speaking English country. The first step is first of all to understand the language.
yeah.
Once you got the language, then you can start understanding now the culture. So we we pretty much have like double challenges.
Mm,
I'm speaking about people who come from non-English speaking countries. So
right.
first of all, understand the language. After that, start understanding the culture, and it will depend on whether or not you decided to embrace the American culture or you decided to keep your own culture. So that's yeah.
So when we talk about keeping your own culture, you just kind of helped me segue into the next point. So when it comes to that whole transnational idea, it seems like obviously we know what it is, and as far as maintaining your culture and staying, connected to your land. How do you create your own transnational identities and practices? What do you do to keep your culture, or do you keep your culture?
Yes, I do. I do keep my culture, and you can tell from my heavy English accent that I keep my culture. So yes, to me, the way I maintain it is when I am around my American friends, I pretty much understand everything they do. I try to identify myself as one of them. But when I am in my with Congolese people, I pretty much play like double game, in a
Mm,
positive way.
yeah.
When I am with American folks, I try to act like them, at least in acting, but not in talking.
Mm.
But when I am with Congolese people, speakers, I'm trying to identify myself as one of them as well. So that's really helped me to um, assimilate and even acculturate it to the American culture and to keep my own culture as well.
So do you have any connections to family members? Do you travel back to Congo, or do you stay? Like, what else do you do, or is that it?
Yeah, yes, I do. I do maintain connection with my friends. When you check, for example, my WhatsApp friend list, you'll see a lot of my friends are from the Congo, and we still talk to each other regularly. So I connect with them, through different social medias, and we talk once in a while, and I do travel as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I even know what's going on in terms of political situation in the Congo, even though I'm not there physically, but I
Right.
have pretty much an idea of what's going on right now
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. And you know what's so interesting about this transnational life we live is that we're so involved and so preoccupied with things that are going on in our native homeland that sometimes the things that are happening here in the United States almost seem secondary. It's like
Right.
even though we're here in the U.S., a lot of those issues, like in the news or things that we see, tend to not really matter to us as much because the things that are really going on in our native homeland tend to affect us a little bit more because we have, our roots there, our immediate family members are there, so the impact feels a little stronger. Is that? I mean, that's how I feel. I don't know about you, but
No, it's exactly right, and I even have like a specific example with the Congolese diaspora in Europe. I mean, they had played a significant role when it comes to because Congolese just had their last election in December of 2018. So the people from Europe, Congolese from Europe, and all over the place, they really played a significant role in terms of making sure that all politicians know that they didn't like the former president, who his name is Joseph Kabila, and they just made sure people don't like him and all of that. So to me, I feel like the diaspora is even though they live overseas, but they still maintain and even play a significant role in the economy or the political situation of their country from their country of origin. And for when I talk about the economic situation, those sending remittances regularly, and which play a major role in improving the lives of certain people overseas. So it is really true that immigrants who live in other country overseas, they still play a major role in for their country of origin.
And I like the fact that you brought up the European aspect of it too. I think sometimes we always have this because we're in America. We always talk about the American African interaction, or maybe in the diaspora in the islands. But I come to realize that from other conversations that there's so many of us, and I'm sure you and we all have relatives in Europe, in European countries like London or Germany or Belgium or wherever. And we have family members all over the world that have migrated to different places that are living their lives. But no matter what, we're still involved heavily in our political, aspects of our native countries, and even to the point where we can influence change despite the fact that we're so far away. It's crazy.
Right. That's true. That's absolutely true, and it's not only with the Congolese people, but you see that when you try to look at the situation from other countries, from a third world country, you see those specific example of people who live overseas plays a significant role as well because of the maintenance of the connection with the land of origin. I feel like it plays a major role.
Yeah. So I'll shift gears a little bit because I think now that we've kind of established that transnational foundation, I kind of want to go back and talk about how you, being from a francophonic country, how you build community. Hometown associations for you might be a little bit different, or maybe they're similar. One of the things that I think about when we talk about hometown associations for the Nigerian community is the churches. So is that similar for you as well? Like, was there a lot of your connections built within the church, or were there other places where you all can build community and help?
That's exactly the same. The hometown association here is built around churches, and but we still have some people who have some association outside the churches, but most of them is surrounded around churches where people can meet and help each other, and making sure everybody people who need help, they help them out, and those kind of stuff.
Yeah. And it seems like for your community, there's a bigger need for the hometown associations to play their role because of the language barrier. I just feel like that plays a major role because there's not that much of a smooth transition. You need that community of people who speak the same language as you to kind of help you get settled before you can tackle on that that task of having to deal with learning how to speak English and then understanding the slangs and all that. I just feel like from my experience, I didn't have to worry about that. The hometown association, we just kind of jumped in and tried to figure out America. But I feel like for French speaking Africans, you have to kind of learn how to, you have to find people who also speak French or Lingala, and then you can kind of work through understanding how to speak English. But there's a more heavier need for language barrier, overcoming those barriers.
That's true. That's true. The thing of I remember one of the paper I published about health insurance in the U.S. It was a comparison study. I was comparing health insurance among African immigrants and African Americans.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the challenge among African Americans was that they have health insurance, but they don't know what type of health insurance they have because they don't understand it. This really speaks to the fact that language barrier is a problem, and also health literacy. I'm sorry, is also a problem as well. So just like I said in the beginning, the major problem it is, first of all, start to understand the language, be able to communicate with people, to understand what they're trying to say. And after that, yes, you can start to figure out the culture as well.
So what do you think causes stress for you, or people who are like you? What do you think causes stress for them? What do you think is a major stressor?
Among non-French speaking people?
French speaking, yeah.
Among French-speaking people, I think first of all, just like we said it before, is language barrier.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is stressful, and besides that, I think to adapt to acculturate into the American culture is also a little bit stressful because where we came from, we socialize differently with people. So a specific example that I can give, there is no way you can live in a neighborhood in Africa without even talking to your neighbor. It's impossible. It's impossible. I mean, you'll feel like you are rejected, if you act like that. Yeah. So we always socialize with the neighbor. So that's one of the elements that really makes people immigrate directly from African countries such as the Congo, who came here. They cannot even talk to their neighbor because you don't know who they are, and you feel like there is a disconnect. You disconnect between. You don't talk to your neighbor, so it creates a stressful event. And also, I believe sending remittances can be another stressful factor because people back home feel like people who immigrate here, they have reached their American dream, which is not always true, and people trying to ask for money every single time. I think it creates a stressful event, which in future can expose people to chronic diseases that me and you, we know, stroke and, a high blood pressure, which can lead to a stroke.
Yeah, and and whether you speak English or you don't speak English or whatnot, I definitely think that was something. If you remember what we did when we did that pilot study in 2014, and that was one of the main things that was mentioned by participants is the fact that you don't in America, the neighbors don't interact with each other.
Right.
It's so independent of a culture where we as Africans, especially even when in our transnational state, we're very interdependent. We rely on that village feel, and everyone knows each other. We all come together. Everyone's an auntie and uncle somewhere, right? We're all related in some way or form, even if it's not biologically or genetically, but by just being from the same community or block, we're all family. And I think that's something that stresses them out when they come to the United States, is that they feel like they're on their own, which is why we have to rely on those hometown associations or other spaces where we can kind of continue to keep our culture. So then now, I'm curious to know, what was your experience when you came in, right? Like, what was the strangest thing as far as like What was the strangest part of the American culture that you observed? Like, what was strange to
You
you?
mean the strangest thing?
Yeah, what did you find strange or weird or different?
Huh. I would not say weird per se, but I would say what was really interesting is the fact that people don't socialize the way we used to socialize back home. Back home, I like one concept that I found here in the U.S. In some residential area where we have the people say they have the neighbor watch. You
Mm.
know, in Africa, we don't say that, but we live it.
Mm-hmm.
We know it automatically. We don't say the neighbor is watching. It's automatically. I'm watching over my neighbor,
Yeah.
making sure everybody's fine over there. And another aspect also in Africa, it's pretty and basic. I know it's you'll find a parent of your friends is automatically your parent.
Yep.
He can talk to you directly, or he can even punish you when you do wrong.
Yeah.
And even when your parents are aware of the punishment you had from a neighbor or whoever, they're not gonna go and fight the person who punish you. They will sometimes punish
Even
their
more.
own son. So
Yeah.
this is just to say that I'm not encouraging all of that, but this is to show that the way we live as a big family in Africa culture, and that's one of the aspects. And again, I just want to emphasize, I'm not pro, punishment, physical punishment, and all of that, but it's just a way to emphasize people really live in a community as a one big family.
Yeah, way to cover your behind, man. I see that. That's a good job.
Mhm.
No, that's well said because it's true, and I think that just plays a huge emphasis on that community feeling. And the interesting part, and this is kind of foreshadowing the question I'm about to ask you now. The conversation we'll switch to about is just that a lot of the African Americans, especially in talking to my wife Wanda and just kind of talking to other people who live in the South, like in Georgia, or even when I was in Florida, there's still that feel, right? It's a little old school as far as that it takes a
Mhm.
village and that whole, the block, we all watched out for each other, but it seems like something that's not there anymore. And I wonder,
Mhm.
what was your experience as far as interacting with the African American community, and how does that work from your own personal perspective, but also like among Congolese people? How do they feel about the African American community overall? And the interactions.
Honestly, I mean, to me, I interact pretty well with African Americans people, and I feel like culturally speaking, we are the same. You can identify some elements that are the same from African American and African people. The way we live, we trying to maintain the the relationship within the family really
Mm-hmm.
we maintain it pretty much the same way. And for example, during the family reunion, you see cousins, first degree cousin, and all of that coming. And so to me, it wasn't really hard to identify myself with African American culture. And I think it's pretty much the same way with Congolese immigrants that I know. That they really don't have hard time to identify themselves with African Americans people.
That's really good. Because for me, it seems like not my own personal experience per se, but I always sense that there's a little bit of a divide between both groups. And I wanted to know, why do you think that is? Maybe if y'all in the Congolese community maybe not experience that, which is awesome, then why do you think there's that perception that there's a divide between both groups? And
For those people who think that there is a divide, I suspect that it will be only related to the fact that they don't speak English.
mm,
Specifically for people who come from non-English speaking country.
mhm.
And besides that, uh, there is pretty much some element, culturally speaking, that are identical, and yes, so I don't feel like there is a really big difference and to say that they don't connect each other.
Mhm.
I don't feel that way.
That's good. And so then I'll kind of shift off because the research that I'm currently working on, and I think we talked about this a little bit off the air, was I'm currently working on a paper that observes the literature that's out there discussing the stress, the stressors, and the coping strategies between African immigrants or just Black immigrants in
Mhm.
general, because it's also including the diaspora and the Caribbean immigrants and African Americans, Native African Americans, and what the differences are. And some of the things that we're finding out are very interesting because there are some similarities as far as the coping strategies, right? And I find that to be very interesting because if the coping strategies and the behaviors and how we deal with stress seem to be very similar, whether it's religion, spirituality, whatever type of activity that you behave, or maybe relying on family support and interdependence. I find it interesting that the stressors are different, right? One is acculturative, and the other one is more racially infused and things of that nature. So it's very interesting to see that although in a general population wide, as far as the public opinion, there seems to be this perception that there's an African versus African American beef, but it seems to maybe be changing, which is really good.
I agree. I agree. I mean, the stressors are different because I don't think African Americans have to worry about sending remittances,
Mm-hmm.
but African people from immigrants from Africa, they do. So the stressors are really different. But again, the coping mechanism are pretty similar because African people, at least Congolese people, trying to rely also on religion and to friends and family to cope with their stress. So I agree with that. It is true.
So, bro, what do you think about African Americans trying to connect back with Africa? Like, what do you think? What would you think if someone tried to like come back to Congo, even though they've never been there before, and as an African American, and like wants to establish, connections there and reverse that transnational process? What are your thoughts about that?
I think that's one of the greatest idea African immigrants can do. I mean, if they can afford it, because we know how expensive it is to travel back in
Yeah,
Africa,
yeah,
and one of the reasons is, to me, I think it's helping them to find their roots. Right,
yeah.
even though we know it's really hard, there is pretty much no relics that they can, that can help them to uh, find exactly when they came from, in what part of the country
Mm-hmm.
exactly, or what tribe in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like it's always a great idea if they can afford it to, even though even when they cannot afford it, but they can at least identify, trying to learn some African culture through immigrants like us who live here, who maintain, those African culture here. They can try to understand what's going on, because at the end of the day, they came from there,
Yeah.
And I think it's just a great idea for those who feel like they want to go back to learn. Yes, please do so if you can afford it. If not, I'm pretty sure they will encounter, a African guy here and try to learn why you doing this, why you doing that, and why you guys act this way. And yes.
Yeah, I agree. And so then we're almost wrapping up. So there's a couple more questions as far as for now, for when we think about the second generation. So you have a family, you have children, and what are your visions or expectations, if you have any, as far as raising your kids who are born here,
Mhm.
and trying to still have that transnational, element in aspects in their lives to keep them connected to their roots. How do you plan on keeping that going?
Yeah, I'll tell you one funny thing. My youngest one. not even my youngest one, my first one. I'm sorry. He was telling me, but you telling us we are from the Congo, but we were born here and we don't even know how to speak the language. How can we be from the Congo? I'm like, "No, actually, yes, you are Americans, but originally your parents are from the Congo. So you will, when you grow up, I will start to bring you back to Congo to understand the culture, even though you're not going to be able to fully to fully speak the language if you're not interested, but at least I will expose you to the culture so that way you know exactly that my parents came from this place and this is how they do things based on the culture and all of that. So and I think it's really important to for those of us who are having kids here in the U.S. to always show them that they are free, to maintain the transnationalism connection and transnational connection with the country of their parents where they came from. But also, it's always important to let them do it by themselves, not to really force them. Oh, you have to be, from my country of origin, or you have to be an American. Let them choose, but give them the opportunity to choose.
Man, that's dope. That's really deep because you remember we talk about that term that I always bring up, reverse acculturation. When we talk about how a child is born here in the U.S., but their environment and everything else that's around them is American. But in their household, they are told, they are sometimes even forced to identify with a country and acculturate to a country and a lifestyle and a practice that they've never, to a country that they've never ever been to, right? But you're told that you are Nigerian, you're a Congolese, and you eat the food. You may not speak the language, but everything else, as far as how you interact with your parents or grandparents and your relatives and your aunties and uncles, how you interact is all culturally rooted into a country they've never been to. But everything else around them is American. So there's that dual identity, that biculturalism that's going on. And it's just a fascinating thing. So that's why it's interesting to see that you're actually, exercising that in your household in some way, some form. But the whole aspect of letting them choose, giving them that information, bro, I think that's powerful. That's really, really rich.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to let them choose because at the end of the day, it's their lives, right? We always there to kind of help them, to show them this is the way I was born, this is my culture, and this is the culture of the country where you were born. So it's really up to you now to choose. If you decided to live like a Congolese man in the U.S., that's fine. If you decided to live like an American man in the U.S., that's fine. But the good thing about it is at least you know that if your parents identify, your parents come from somewhere, you know it exactly. You know the country, you know the tribe, you know all of that. Mm-hmm. Nothing is completely out of the blue. That's one of the important elements I think as immigrant parents we can teach our sons and daughters here.
The funny thing about it is that if you were to say that back a while back or in Africa, they'd say that you become Americanized.
But I told you, right? I mean, to me, there is always good things in good and bad things in every culture around the world, right? Yeah. So this is one of the positive things I like about American culture. Giving people choice and let them choose. Yeah. Period.
Yeah. No, that's real. That's real. So, all right. Before I let you go, what else is going on with you as far as the research goes? What else do you want to is coming up? I know you got a big grant, diversity supplement going on, and so what's
a big grant?
Yeah, hey, you the big man, dog. You the big man, the NIH man.
No, I'm doing a citywide intervention with a researcher from Columbia University, and we're doing that at Mount Vernon in New York.
Okay.
And it's a campaign where we helping people to identify stroke symptoms and also to call 911 when they witness stroke signs and symptoms. So it's a citywide project that we're doing.
Okay, man, that's fantastic, and that's a really big thing now, especially the stroke epidemic. I know you've published something as far as the stroke belt, but now we're doing something up here in New York. I mean, the city of New York in itself, in the state of New York, I should say, as far as their public health agenda, has always been very strong. So I'm super excited for you, man. And, we still got a lot of work to do on our end, too. So don't forget about the transnational mission, man. We still got to talk about what happens to people who live in Africa who are impacted by that transnational family and how it plays a role with health. We still got a lot of other good stuff we got to do. So, don't get that NIH money and forget about me, right? So just put that out there.
Exactly, bro. We have to, with the growing immigrant population in the U.S., yes, something must be done to make sure that immigrants who came healthy stay healthy for a long period of time.
Absolutely.
And that's something I really care about it, and I know you care about it as well, to make sure immigrants stay healthy, and not only immigrants, to extend it to the American population overall, to make sure everybody are healthy and can live a healthy life.
Absolutely, man. So, and that's a good way to end it. I just want to thank you, Dr. Lunga Shishwaka, for taking the time to join me on this podcast show. I could not introduce this podcast to the world and complete my first season without having you on it. It would be a disservice. I would be remiss. So I'm glad that you had the opportunity to join me, my brother. It's been, I'm just very glad that this happened. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you so much, bro, Dr. Ibe Lambert. Bro, it was really a pleasure for having me on this show. And you know how much I admire you and how much I appreciate the work you do. And the best is yet to come.
Yes, it is. And I forgot to. What's your Nigerian name is Tunde, right? I forgot to let your Baba Tunde. That's your Nigerian.
Exactly.
Oh,
So for all my Niger, my Oga from Niger, remember you have another Oga here.
Yes, we do. Man, thanks so much, bro. I appreciate it, man. You have a good one. We'll talk again.
All right, you too, and my regards to your family.
Will do, bro.
Bye-bye.
That's going to do it for this episode of My Black is Transnational. I want to thank you all for taking the time and listening to this show. I hope you all really enjoyed the interview. If you like what you heard and you'd like to continue to listen to more episodes, please feel free to subscribe on your favorite podcast listening app. You can also email me at blacktransnational17@gmail.com or follow me on Instagram at blacktransnational_. All right, so thank you all again. We'll talk again soon. My name is Dr. Kelechi Ibe Lambert. My Black is Transnational. It's English, but I hope by the end of this, yours will be too. Peace.